Good evening. You're on the smoking section with Stephen Helfer, and I think we have a guest. Paul, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. I thought I was...
Why don't you take your coat off and don't go in front of the screen, please?
Is there a seat over there?
No, I would suggest sitting in this seat that I'm sitting in, okay? But you can take your coat off and leave it on that seat over there. Thank you. And you cut it a little close tonight, I would
I
say.
did, yeah.
Now, be careful. Let's not hit this, okay? Because that will cause our viewers to get seasick. Let's see. Oh my gosh, I don't know if I can get this chair to work. Okay, we're gonna have to get close tonight. Well, thank you for making it. I guess they say better late than never, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
And not really that late.
Well, I mean, it's usually, no, I think that hat doesn't do you justice, man. I think I think that would be better.
As long as the hair, oh, I look like
Well, you look okay. You look okay. Let's just stop this
kind of a
from
midnight
swinging.
cowboy.
So, there's the newest news in terms of the tobacco policy is. Oh, by the way, this is my friend and Paul Neff. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
And my name is Stephen Helfer, and you're watching the smoking section. And the telephone number is right there. If you have any questions, complaints, or any crank jokes that you want to make, we're here. If you want us to be the butt of your jokes, we're perfectly welcome to do that, right? I guess we can speak for both of us, right?
Yep. Take your best shot.
There is something called in Congress. I think it's a group of congressmen in House of Representatives, federal representatives who call themselves the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah.
And they have a list of regulations, federal regulations they would want to undo, and they're seeking feedback from them.
Yeah.
And one of them that Audrey Silk of Clash, New York City citizens, Clash, Citizens Against Smoke, what is it, CLASH, Against Smoker Harassment, Citizens League, is it?
I don't know.
Smokers,
don't know.
Smokers Harassment, has asked people to email, there's a form, and you can email them. Oh, look, we got a message already, a phone message. Shall we pick it up?
Why not?
You're on the smoking section.
Hi, Steve.
Jim, how are you?
Hiya.
I can't hear you.
Hiya.
Go ahead.
Yeah, it's Steve. It's Jim.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
All right. I had to give up my pipe.
Why is that?
My grandson asked me to.
Oh, well, I mean, that's
That's no reason.
well, why did he ask you to give up your pipe?
I just said it wasn't good for me.
Well, there's so many people who have lived to be close to 100 after 100
Yeah, but
pipes.
Steve,
Listening.
listen.
I'm
This
listening.
is my grandson. I'm not going to convince him that tobacco is okay.
How old is he? How old is he?
That's not my thing, Steve. I'm sorry.
Okay. How old is he? Jim. Huh.
Listen, Steve,
Yeah.
that reminded me, one thing that's on my mind, and I have started writing my piece for Emily.
Yes.
That's been on my mind is one of the fundamentals of the anti-smoking narrative that's very hard to attack. It's
Yes.
like a trump card. It is this, whatever we do, it's all important. Keep tobacco out of the hands of children.
Right.
And the definition of children, when I was a kid, regarding tobacco, it was 16, and then it went up to 18, and then to 21, and now they're considering advancing it even further.
Well, in some areas it's 21. It's not 21 in the state of Massachusetts.
Well, my point is that this is almost unchallenged. It's like, it's incontestable. Like, the one thing we can all agree on is keep tobacco out of the hands of children.
Right.
I think that's very weak.
And why is that?
Very attackable. Because, well, for one thing, the people that I knew in school that started smoking early are still around.
Yeah, so you...
That this is a novel thing. It's an innovation, this concept that responsible thought begins at a later and later age.
Right.
And that anyone that starts smoking starts before the age of reason by accident due to some perverse or some or pathological urge.
Peer group pressure.
And they get hooked. And
Yes.
And after that, they can say, well, I'd love to stop, but I'm hooked.
Well-
And like a lot of smokers found that very convenient, during periods where they were under heavy fire, which I think we're going to see less of. Smokers are coming back with more defenses.
No, but that, I think that I really want to explore this issue that you're bringing up and these thoughts that you have, particularly vis-a-vis a piece of writing that you're going to submit to Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights blog. But Jim's point, Jim a couple of weeks ago told me that he had started smoking a pipe after having given up cigarettes for many years, and that he found it enjoyable and relaxing.
Right.
And even Jim was going to call me up and we were going to smoke a pipe together, but evidently his grandson objects.
Right.
And he guess his grandson feels it's not good for Jim.
Well, I can
And
relate
so-
to the grandson.
Right.
I did the same when I was a grandson.
You badgered your
And
parents
a
and
son,
stuff?
but I simply did not have that power back
Yes,
then.
right.
My father didn't feel any qualms about explaining to me what the attraction was, what it was all about, and defending himself. And with the Surgeon General's report, my parents did quit for a while. My father went back to a pipe after not too long, but I mean, they made the effort. But the point is that at that time, the children did not, they weren't the force they are today.
I guess, well, times
Like,
change.
It's like Savonarola is in power these days with the Children's Crusade.
Well, you want to give us what that allusion is to, because it flies above my head.
So, the bonfire of the vanities, Savonarola was a fanatic and a leader, galvanizing leader, but he led the children in gathering up all objects of vanity from all the houses
And where
just
was this?
throwing them in a big fire. Italy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And was he a Roman Catholic? Was he a heretic? Was he what?
I'm not sure. Well, he was against Pope Alexander, so that makes
And
him a heretic.
what century are we talking?
What century was Pope Alexander?
Oh gosh, I haven't the slightest idea.
15th, maybe?
So, okay, now, all right. But that's what Jim is saying, and, and Jim and I were going to get together and smoke a pipe and so on and so forth. But I mean, I guess his son or his grandson has been so, I'm trying to use it, is so persuaded that by so much, I don't know, I'm trying to find a neutral word, but let's say propaganda, in the
Media
schools,
saturation
so
of the
forth.
anti-smoking
But it reminds
narrative.
me. My parents and I used to visit a cousin of my mother's, and she lived in this house in Ballston Spa, New York.
Yeah.
And we used to go up, and they were an elderly couple who had I guess they had about 7 kids at some point, and we used to visit them. And Dan Sweeney was the man of the household. Mm-hmm. And at this point, he was a gray-haired man and very, had retired. In fact, he had worked in a tannery in Ballston Spa.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the 1950s.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there are not too many tanneries around these days, I don't think, Mm-hmm. And he just used to sit in the corner. I can still see him there. He had this little, kind of chair.
Yeah.
Leather kind of comfortable chair. Mm-hmm. And it was next to the window. And he used to just sit there, smoke his pipe all day.
Yeah.
and the whole house had this very beautiful aroma of tobacco. I mean, as a kid, I certainly didn't object, and no one would have objected to that, and it was just very nice. And I don't know what age Dan Sweeney died, but he must have been about 86 or 87.
The thing is, Jim feels kind of like he's not really entitled to defend himself because that, in effect, that would be contributing to the likelihood that the grandson may someday start smoking.
Well, I don't know. We don't know.
Which is written as a loss by the mass
Well, we don't
media.
know the details.
It sounded that way to me.
Or it could
felt,
be that his son objects to the second answer. But anyway, his grandson, yeah.
but it felt to me like he feels constrained not to do anything that might seem to endorse smoking. to
That may
his
be it. That's a reasonable.
That's what I felt.
So, but you were bringing something else about this kids not smoking. That's a little bit different. Okay, so this whole thing about children not smoking. Well, if someone said to you, if a anti-smoking operative said to you, well, you don't want kids to smoke, do you, Paul? What would you reply?
I would say it's up to them.
Up to them.
Yes.
At what age?
Oh, say it would really be up to the parents. I don't see anything wrong with 16.
What about 6?
6 would be a tad too young. I mean, it is like, it's up there with coffee. I mean, when you have your first cup of coffee, it's not at 6 usually. I mean, smoking is an adult thing, like driving. And when I was a kid, the driving age was 16,
Right.
where I was. And so it's a rather serious decision. But not great.
I mean, is it
not
really that
grave.
serious? I mean, like-
not grave. No. What I mean, it's a rite of passage. That's what I'm getting at. It's a moment when a kid feels very privileged to be able to smoke,
Yeah.
and that's kind of meaningless if you're allowing 6-year-olds.
I mean, I was
to smoke.
I didn't have permission to smoke at the age of 11 or 12, but I mean, I wasn't smoking regularly, but I was smoking.
Yeah, we didn't see that in my neighborhood. It was the bad kids that smoked.
And by 14 or 15, I was pretty regularly smoking. And I don't think I ever got permission to smoke, even when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But then when I came home from college, I mean, I was just smoking openly. I don't think there was any point my parents said, "Oh, well, you now have permission to smoke."
Right.
In their presence.
Well, I was always fascinated and amazed, actually, by kids who were able to smoke under the same roof as their parents with no problem. I didn't understand.
Well, kids, when you say
how
kids,
they did
how
that.
old?
16.
Really?
Or 15.
Well, at my high school, I went to a private school for a while, and at my high school, seniors had a smoking room,
Right. My school
but
too.
their parents needed to sign a note.
My school too. Well, actually, at the age of 16, you could get that note.
But they had to be seniors. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if the kid was
Mine was
14
more
and would
liberal.
put forth. But this was a private school, not a public school. So, I mean, yeah, this big thing about kids smoking. Well, I mean, there is a pretty big study from Scandinavia that has found that young people, if they begin smoking in their teen years and they smoke rather heavily, it seems to have a protective effect against schizophrenia.
That's
later in
interesting.
life.
Well, what I was going to say was the people that did start smoking, often they were the bright kids, the popular kids, the attractive kids, the
Yeah.
talented kids. And there was more smoking actually at the school affiliated with the University of Connecticut than at my rural school, where it was distinct minority.
Yeah.
In other words, the children of professors were more likely to smoke and more likely to
Well,
smoke.
when I was in 11th grade, I don't think there were that many 11th graders in my school who smoked every day.
Right.
And I don't think there were many 11th graders, if any, who could smoke in front of their parents.
Yeah.
And we weren't allowed to smoke on school grounds,
Yeah.
but it was no big deal for 11th graders to smoke. And it was no sign that the person was particularly, let's say, promiscuous in some way or something like that.
Right. Well, what I was going to suggest, and I think I know I've read this idea suggested somewhere, and it rings true to me that the desire to try smoking at that age, for one thing, it's undoubtedly with a lot of kids very, very powerful, and also that it's normal and healthy.
Well,
To want to try things that adults appear to like, and things that are associated with adulthood.
yeah.
That it is healthy. And I also read, and it was more common to read this back in the 60s than it is today, that the sane approach on the part of the parents is to be permissive because this will blow over, if it's going to blow over, sooner. If you don't
Well,
make,
is there any
make
reason?
an
Well, of
initial.
course-
Wait a minute, wait.
Yeah, go ahead.
Probably it's more likely it won't. But in any case, trying to repress it and making it an issue is not going to help.
Right, except for the fact that right now we seem to see this teenage smoking rate at the lowest it's been in 50 years.
Probably it might have something to do with the exponentially increased price due to the taxation and the fact that, for instance, at Rins and Latin, they now have members of the staff during lunch break that walk around, kind of circulate, making sure kids are not smoking like the way they used to only a few years ago in front of the old library. And
maybe it's because they're all smoking so much marijuana that,
I don't think marijuana's got a thing to do with it.
No.
I think the movement for liberalization of marijuana it's a parallel thing. It's the anti-smoking movement is not favorable toward the liberalizing marijuana. And they did not bother to.
I don't think that's right.
They didn't bother to plant moles to complain about the heavy smoking, the very, very, like 60s level of smoking at the hemp fests.
Okay,
They didn't think of it
let me get a word in
because
edgewise.
smoking
okay?
is, to them, smoking is bad, period.
Let me get an edge. Well, I mean, I don't think you're factually correct there. I mean, I don't think any of the leaders of the anti-smoking movement, like Stanton Glantz or Thomas Frieden, I can't think of any right off the top of my head. Any of the others, like the guy who runs the campaign for tobacco-free kids, or Michael Bloomberg, for example, all really, really virulent anti-smokers. I don't think any of them have made any statements that they are against, or even that people should. I don't think they've joined in the pro-marijuana movement, but none
Right.
of them have spoken out against
Well,
it.
the pro-marijuana movement appears to be on the rise,
That's for sure, but none of those people have spoken against it, so I don't think
Well, all right, the ideas, the narrative of the anti-smoking movement, which I maintain it has not gained anywhere near the traction that the antis would like with the public.
Well, that's for sure.
That is with people in professions not connected with ending smoking.
Right.
They do insist, and they were sort of successful at this in the 90s, pressuring publishers, and people like that, that any reference to smoking had to in some way extend the anti-smoking narrative. It couldn't just be referred to casually with no mention of disease or death. It couldn't merely be cute.
The only thing I want to say is that I don't think the hierarchy of the anti-smoking movement has spoken out in any way against marijuana.
It's not their issue.
Okay,
But
that's my only point.
all right, my point is that the overwhelming majority of people that I've known who smoke marijuana and use drugs, I'm not talking about heroin either, tend to be the smokers. When I was in school, they tended to be the kids that smoked, and I still find that today. Like while we're out there petitioning, a lot of the kids that come up to sign, by kids I mean 18 to 21, college age, the kids that come up to sign enthusiastically, a lot of times they are also proponents of LSD and things like that.
Well, okay, that I don't know, but
Well, I do know. I do
okay,
know.
all right, I don't know. I mean, your observations are different than mine. That's all.
I know, folks.
Your impressions are different than mine. I mean, like we go out on the street, and in some ways our impressions are the same. In some ways our impressions are different. That you right or wrong?
Well, fact.
Let's go to the smoker of the week before you get into a heated
Let me guess.
argument. Or you want to spit something out?
Well,
Go ahead.
it's not going to be a young person, is it?
What's
It's
that?
going to be an oldster.
Right.
Yeah.
If you get a good young person here,
I would put Kate Winslet on.
well, if you get a recent picture of Kate Winslet smoking, I would be very, very good. A recent picture, but not something 12 years ago.
Why?
Because 12 years ago, who knows if she's still smoking?
I don't think she's changed her tune. She's very much against the narrative.
Oh, okay.
I'll just call it the narrative.
Right.
The narrative that smoking is evil for all people at all times and
Okay.
should be permitted never.
Okay, if you can come up with some, quote of hers, I would be very interested in
No,
seeing
but a
it.
picture.
Well, if she says something.
Catherine Deneuve. Oh.
Anyway, here is our smoker of the week, and he's dead, okay? 92 years old, he just died.
Is that Melvin Belli?
I think it looks a little bit like him. But one thing that I like about this photo is this man his name is Usery, Bill Usery. And this is a photo of him in his office way back in 1976, so that's 40 years ago. And that year, a colleague called him the most successful mediator in the country's history.
Yeah.
He was a great mediator, and I think, in a New York Times article, if I may read you a little bit, keen observers of collective bargaining at the Labor Department say they can tell how well negotiations are going just by watching Mr. Usery's cigars. Mm-hmm. If he puffs a new long cigar at 2 a.m., it means that bargaining is going badly and he is preparing to force the negotiators back to the table for the rest of the night. If, however, he appears in the corridors and attempts to light the stump of a cigar without burning his nose as he pauses for a few minutes of conversation in his soft drawl, it is taken as a sure sign that negotiations are going well. Mm-hmm. And the reason I find this, I like this photo. Don't you think it's a great photo?
Yeah. Yeah. Very 70s, the mutton chops.
Oh, the mutton chops. Yeah. That's right. I forgot. That's really, really 70s, right?
I worked in a hospital in 1975, 10 years after the Surgeon General's report, by the way. And I noticed the doctors and nurses, there wasn't especially like a dearth of smoking among doctors and nurses.
Right. And I used to see a psychotherapist.
Prevalent. There was one anti-smoking guy, and he was the first to mention that I heard side stream smoke.
Oh, really?
And its potential for curtailing freedom in the future. But he was regarded as a pest by most people.
Well, I used to see a psychotherapist in Mass General Hospital around 1982, and she and I would, smoke very heavily in her office in Massachusetts General Hospital. Mm-hmm. And I saw her over a period of many years, and it was like one thing after another, and it got tighter and tighter and tighter. But those were the days when freedom was more extant. But the reason I find this interesting particularly was, first of all, he lives to be 92, so we know he lives a long time.
Yeah.
So his tobacco smoking did not seem to curtail his longevity. But also the fact that he was a great mediator.
Yeah.
He could see both sides of an argument. He could get two groups of people with radically different agendas to come to an agreement. And if you relate that to something I'm now going to read, which was an observation by a French Jesuit who lived in the 17th century, and he said, referring to American Indians, they believe that there is nothing so suitable as tobacco to appease the passions. That is why they never attend a council without a pipe or a calumet in their mouths. The smoke, they say, gives them intelligence and enables them to see clearly through the most intricate matters. Mm-hmm. And here is a man who is a heavy smoker of cigars, and he is considered the best mediator at least at that time in American history. And I mean, I think don't you think that our government would work much better if there was a lot more tobacco smoking in the halls of power than the fact that they're all the most part of them are non-smoking and they're forbidden to smoke?
I don't know if even that would help the government the way it is now. I'm not sure what would help, but I don't think making an issue out of it and forcing them to not smoke while they're doing their work, I think that's a hindrance for sure. And smoking, I notice, or nicotine, I should say, is more widely accepted as a cognitive enhancer.
Well, it is. It's considered the best cognitive enhancer that there is.
I think even by people that have the standard views about smoking, and I think that's something that's got to change. And I think the way to do that would be to defend smoking not strictly on utilitarian grounds.
On what grounds would you defend it other than utilitarian?
Aesthetic, and above all,
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot about this because when I walked into the Algiers in the 90s, that was the one period where I thought the antis were gaining traction with the public. You were seeing less smoking on the street, and it was very sad. But when I went up to the Algiers, what struck me was the variety of gestures and the freedom, and just it was beautiful.
Yes, I agree
and
with you.
What I saw was a lot of signaling, like how it facilitates gestures, expression, and I think that's what attracts younger
We
people.
only have 8 seconds left, Paul. Do you want to say goodbye to our audience?
See you later, folks.
Thanks for watching. Good night.
Okay.